Hi guys, I've been saying for some time that Nigel Farage wants to copy positions and policies that Donald Trump and MAGA hold in the United States and paste them into the UK. And because immigration is a cornerstone of Reform UK's policies, then they have to double down on the aggression towards asylum seekers, refugees and foreign nationals. So the Telegraph is running with this story. Farage pledges to expel hundreds of thousands of migrants. Reform says mass deportation would save £234 billion as it warns Boriswave of migration will take critical toll on welfare system. Okay, the Boriswave that they're talking about here, and let's leave the figures because they just extract them from their behind, so we won't even bother looking at the figures here. But the Boriswave that he's talking about, of course, is a result of two things: the pandemic and Brexit. So when the UK, Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson can't be blamed for the pandemic, but when it comes to Brexit, they implemented a policy that resulted in migration increasing, because when the UK relied on migrants to work in its economy from the EU, and then that was stopped because of Brexit, the ending of freedom of movement, it resulted in people coming from outside the EU to do the jobs that EU migrants were no longer doing, or that British people can't do or don't want to do. We're talking about the NHS, we're talking about the care sector, we're talking about hospitality. So, just to name a few industries. So, the Boriswave meant that non-EU migrants were replacing EU migrants, and while EU migrants generally came on their own, non-EU migrants are bringing their families with them, and this has resulted in a mass increase in the numbers of migrants coming in. This is because of Brexit. Now, is Nigel Farage pointing the finger of blame at himself? Of course not. He's pointing the finger of blame, in a sense, at Boris Johnson, because he's describing this Boriswave. Now, the article also says that Nigel Farage will pledge to eject hundreds of thousands of legal migrants in an unprecedented reversal of Britain's relaxed border rules. I wouldn't really call them relaxed. They're quite strict. But anyway, he's talking about deporting legal migrants, a bit like Donald Trump. The Reform UK leader will unveil plans to force all migrants with permanent residency to reapply for visas under stricter criteria, including a higher salary requirement and a better standard of English. So he's going to make it more difficult for people who are already in the country legally, who are working, contributing. He's going to deport these people. Well, you may say, well, won't they match the requirements? No, because in some cases there will be a higher salary requirement. So even if their English is better, as they've been living in the country, they'll be forced to have a higher salary requirement, and many people won't meet that threshold. So they will not be able to stay in Britain. Now, kicking out a load of people will have economic impacts, of course. If you kick out a lot of people who are doing jobs that are necessary, then you're going to have a smaller pool of workers. The UK will become less attractive as a destination, so it would make it more difficult for companies to access the people they need. There's also this thing that that Nigel Farage wants to push, is he wants to take support away from migrants. He said that he wants to deny benefits to foreign nationals. Now, he hasn't defined what he means by foreign nationals, which means that, well, his Home Office will have a bit of trouble trying to understand what a foreign national is. Because a foreign national could be somebody who's in the country legally. It could be an asylum seeker. Obviously, asylum seekers don't have access to benefits. It could be somebody who's a refugee. We don't know. It could be somebody who is in the country with a work visa, a humanitarian visa, a student visa. We don't know. And to take benefits away from people, you'd need a complex bureaucracy, which of course would be expensive. Now, it could be more expensive than the amount of money you'd save deporting people. But Reform UK don't really care. They're a bit like the Tories. They're willing to spend other people's money in order to push something ideological, like the Rwanda deal, remember. But we know that if you try to deport people without enforcing the rules, There will be challenges from human rights lawyers. There will be challenges in the court. And of course, if you take support away from migrants who are working and supporting their families, you will increase poverty. You will increase destitution, because many of the asylum seekers, many of the migrant workers who are receiving support are at the lower end of the economic scale. So if you take that support away from them, what do you think is going to happen? They may not have the money to return back to their home countries. So they will fall into destitution. And we know that poverty and crime are deeply linked. So you're going to see rising crime rates. Nigel Farage has not thought this thing out at all. He just wants to act tough. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see the mainstream parties like Labour and the Conservatives look at this and say, oh, we need to act tougher too. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.